I've always been fascinated by movie rankings. More specifically, the rankings of websites like IMDb with their top 100 lists and other lists that were created by supposedly respectable and prestigious publications that knew the ins and outs of cinema and Hollywood in general. However, I'm not convinced by all of this. I mean, let's look at some of the latest news companies to putting out movie rankings. Like, for example, the first one I found, Empire Online, put out a list of their top 100 movies of all time. Now, obviously, not everyone's going to agree with this list, but however, as a media publication, I thought they would have explained how they came to these conclusions. They said they asked the readers, but how? Did they ask the readers to give their full 100 list, which would be more accurate to their small sample size, but would be far harder to quantify accurately? Or did they all ask the readers to just select a few films for the best films of all time? And if so, how do they pick where they go? And does the author's bias come into play, or is it strictly statistical? And if so, how do we know that it hasn't been skewed? Do you think I'm overthinking this? This article in particular had movies I certainly didn't expect, like Paddington 2 and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in the top 100. As well as having films like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest ranked outside the top 50, a movie which is commonly perceived to be one of the top 10, if not top 20 best films of all time. Then there's publications like Rolling Stone that have movies like Grease in their top 30 and Princess Bride at number 1. Princess Bride at number 1? Wait, what the fuck? So I think it's fair to say that these news publications aren't the most reliable sources when on the subject of finding which movies are best. So who can we deem as more reliable? Why don't we look at companies that are specifically orientated towards cinema as a whole, like Rotten Tomatoes, for example. Rotten Tomatoes is an interesting site as it has two separate ranking systems. It has one ranking for the general population of movie viewers, like you and me and the average idiot. And then it has another specifically for film critics, these high-level, super intellectual, highbrow fucking snobs. This gives for quite a hilarious insight into just how big the disparity is between what critics look for in cinema and what the average viewers look for in cinema. We can look at the recently released Black Adam as a perfect example. The average audiences gave Dwayne Johnson's fucking phenomenal film a respectable 89%, stating that it had good effects and action and had an easy to follow plot, and was even stated to being one of the best DC films to date. I mean, not that that's setting a high bar. I mean, aside from the Batman films, the DC's pretty fucking dog shit. Whilst critics gave it a dismal 39%, stating that it was, quote, wildly uneven letdown. It was a, quote, wildly uneven letdown. How could a movie be so bad yet so enjoyable? Was it so good that it was bad? No, because I've seen it and I didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was pretty good. I wouldn't give it an 89% or a 39%. I don't really understand. I'd give it around a 60 or a 70. Brings the point of how would this be ranked in a list? Would it be ranked on critic score, where it'd be ranked super low, and then you get all these snobby classic films from fucking 70 years ago because of how quote unquote they were revolutionary for the time, even though now today they might suck ass? Or do we go for the general consensus reviews? However, that might mean that things like Avengers Infinity War end up at the top of the list because Marvel fans are fucking psychopaths. So I think the ultimate question is, when looking at movie reviews, are movies rated higher or lower based on objectivity or opinion? Because objectively there are some movies that are just good. Like The Godfather, objectively good. It just has all the perfect components of what makes a film good. And then you have films that are objectively bad, like the second Transformers film. Now, of course, I still enjoy the Transformers because I'm a big child, but objectively, it's a terrible film. The plot makes no sense. I mean, the writers literally gave up on the script halfway through and Michael Bay just had to make it up. The cinematography's stupid, the dialogue's terrible, the acting's awful, but you can still watch it and enjoy it. So how do these things get ranked? And that's where I move on to the final site that I would like to talk about, and that's IMDb, which I think is probably the face of cinema reviews, as it is widely regarded as the most popular of all the rating sites. Many people, when forming their own lists, use IMDb as a reference, and a lot of content on places like YouTube and especially on TikTok revolve around the IMDb top 100 movies of all time. But again, this list isn't without its perfections. IMDb rates movies based on their collective overall viewer score, meaning movies with a lot of mixed reviews will be pushed more than movies with a few great reviews. For example, a movie like Drishyam 2, I don't know if I'm saying that right. Drishyam 2 is an Indian film and it had a rating of 8.8. Yet it won't be rated on a top 100 list, despite having better ratings than some other movies on the list. But these movies that it's rated higher than have way more reviews on the site than Drishyam 2 does. Meaning, whilst the overall rating is worse, the average in terms of the amount of people that voted makes it way better. However, there is still a clear bias for movies that are considered to be more academy friendly. An example of this would be a movie like Pulp Fiction, which was quoted as being revolutionary for its time as it differed from the typical linear timeline that most films were told in, and also broke various genre tropes. It would take very cliche stories and flip them on their head. However, in the more modern day, a large population of people, myself included, would actually say that it does not hold up too well by today's standards. I, for one, think that it's pretty pretentious and up itself and self-absorbed, I think is the best way to say it, and it takes itself far too seriously. You know what I mean? It tries to... However, this stigma of it being a legendary movie clouds people's judgment and almost makes them want to rank a movie higher. I'm scared to even say that I don't particularly like Pulp Fiction because people are like, oh, how are you going to say you don't like Pulp Fiction? Like, do you even like fucking cinema, dude? Are you fucking, what are you, a fucking pussy? Are you a fucking clunge monkey? You fucking idiot? Another perfect example of this herd mentality would be a film like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, which I actually really like, but is currently ranked on IMDb as the 10th best movie of all time. Now, whilst this movie is undoubtedly great, I feel that the main reason it's reached this position is due to people revering it as a classic, because it came out a long time ago and they watched it when they were younger. Like, my dad was watching Good, Bad and the Ugly and other Clint Eastwood Western films when he was younger, and because you have that sort of nostalgic view of it, you rank it higher. But if you go back and watch it today, it's still a good film, but obviously people of my generation are going to be like, oh, well, it takes you out of the movie a bit when you see the movie that is just this poor quality, and the dialogue's not great, and the plot's very straightforward and stuff like that. It's definitely good, but it's just, I don't know if many people would have it in their top 10, but because it's a classic, you have to, you know what I mean? I guess the issue is with a lot of these classic movies and a lot of like these revered movies, as they get viewed with rose-tinted glasses. You hear a movie's great, you go into it expecting it to be great, and then you come out with a good impression. Same with like a bad film. You'll go into like The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and be like, I'm gonna fucking hate this, and then you try and find bits that you hate. But if you go in and watch The Amazing Spider-Man 2 for the first time without knowing what people were thinking, as I did, you'll be like, this isn't that bad. I mean, neither of the Amazing Spider-Man films are great, but I think they're massively overhated because one guy said it was really bad, and then in his review, and then a bunch of his followers were like, yeah, it's really bad, and then all of a sudden that just became the correct opinion to have. It's due to reasons like this where I don't actually believe that any movie review site can be conclusively seen as reliable, nor will we get a conclusive list of what are truly the best films of all time based on beliefs of all generations who will all have wildly different opinions and personal taste and personal preference and technologies at the time and story mechanics at the time. And there are sites like Letterboxd which allow a user to create their own list and page that reflects their taste. However, all of these pages will be so different it'll be hard to draw any conclusions. As well as this, many pages may still be influenced by the beliefs of others, and people may want to fit in by ranking certain movies higher than they actually think they deserve. Like the classic mob films that I personally believe may be slightly overrated, but of course, even saying that's a fucking sin. In conclusion, have your own opinions and like what you want to like. Also, follow me on Letterboxd. And like, and subscribe. And, I don't know, fucking share it with your gran or something, I don't know. Did she watch me? I don't fucking care. Anyway, love you. Bye.
Young Swift.